Oh, hello. I am Marissa, obviously. Maybe not obviously, maybe you don't know me yet, but my name is Marissa. I live in southern Utah and I am a wilderness professional and a burnout expert. I've spent a lot of time in the last 2 years pretty much just really diving into burnout. What makes, like, why are we getting burnt out? How are women getting burnt out differently than men? What is going on here? Especially at a time in our lives when burnout is just rampant. I feel like almost everybody here can probably point to either themselves. Hopefully, that's why you're here. You want to learn more about burnout for yourself, or you know somebody in your life that is just burnt out. Um, and something that I focus on, the twist that I take for healing and for learning and for coaching and everything, is about the power and accessibility of using the wilderness and the outdoors and time alone as an incredible vessel for healing burnout. I have spent years and years of my life just being a wilderness expert. I have spent over 15,000, I added up the hours, over like 15,000 hours facilitating experiences in the wilderness, spending hours upon hours outside and working with adults and adolescents. And it is incredible to see what spending time in nature does to a human. And I think the crazy thing is the accessibility for a lot of us. A lot of us don't have the time and space to be in the wilderness all the time or to be in that nature or the outdoors. Maybe wilderness is a far cry from where you live, but even going to a park can be really hard and challenging for a lot of people. So that's my big focus, is using nature as this powerful tool, as well as how men and women's burnout is different, because as women, we experience the world differently. So welcome everybody. So the main two ways that I support folks through burnout, well, I guess I've got three. The first one is these burnout workshops. This is like the hot and dirty, the fast, the furious. This is everything that I can get to you that will give you a plan and give you something to take away from this really quickly that you can start implementing today. This is probably some of the most empowering information that I ever learned. When I learned this, it like blew my freaking mind. And I was like, the world needs to know this, so I'm going to evangelize it and get it out everywhere. I've got two other ways that I'll talk about way more at the end of the workshop, which is Solitude, a live event where we have everybody come out here into southern Utah and we host a wilderness solo experience, which I can talk more about later. That's why it's called Solitude. And then the other one is an online course where we get to the root cause of the burnout. And it's supported. There's one-on-one coaching with that for 6 weeks long. So those are the two main ways. And then every single person here in this call and who hears the recording has access to a free grounding call. This grounding call will be likely super helpful for a lot of y'all. And this is where you can learn more about your burnout, where you're at with your journey, your stress, get your plan for 2022 more solidified. If you have questions after this would be a great thing to do. These calls are typically from 30 to 60 minutes. It kind of depends on where you're at and what you're kind of interested in diving into. As well as we talk about how I might be able to help you and exactly what it could look like to work together if that's something that interests you. This photo on this slide, I hope you guys are all looking at it because it's this gorgeous shot of Last Light that my husband took maybe a month ago up in central Utah, which this isn't really where we do our workshops, but we are in the desert and it's incredible. And I just love to show his photos. So let's start off quick. So what is burnout? What are the actual causes of it? And how is your burnout differently than maybe your male counterpart? And I'm going to be using binary terms. However, I know that I can see and know that life is not binary. It's not one or the other. It's a sliding scale. And for all intents and purposes, we're talking about how we've been socialized, how women as a whole, like the macro view of things, how we've been socialized versus how men have been socialized. And things are changing, as they always are. But what is burnout? We're going to dive deeper into each one of these three things on the next slide, but I want to go through it quickly right here. The first thing is depersonalization. So Depersonalization is basically, I'll dive into the next one. Depersonalization, a decreased sense of accomplishment and emotional exhaustion. Maybe for each one of those, take a second and think about what you think that means to you. What does depersonalization mean? What does a decreased sense of accomplishment mean, or look like, or feel like? And what does emotional exhaustion look like or feel like for you? I'll give you like 20 seconds here to kind of like sit there, think about it really quick. And if you have a little share that you want to add, please feel free to add anything to the chat box. I have it pulled up right here. There's my weatherman finger. It's down that way, but it's on my screen. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about those things. And I'm a wiggly person, so I'm sorry, I move around a lot. So how is men's and women's burnout different? This is probably the number one thing that I believe helps women get empowered and to start healing their burnout. Because men and women, we live different lives. Even if you are interacting with a male world, even if you're the most empowered, strong, assertive woman in the world, you are still interacting as a woman. And that means that there are certain things that society is putting on us. Even if you just think it's bullcrap, it's still there. We cannot take away the fact that the world is happening. Okay. So the biggest thing is women have been socialized. This is what we call part of human giver syndrome, which I go way more into in the online course, I believe, as well as in one-on-one calls. So I'm going to skim over this a little bit. But the idea is women have been socialized to be pretty, happy, calm, generous, and attentive to the needs of others. Each one of you who is in this workshop right now, take a second to think about how that shows up in your life. Maybe you don't want to get angry at work because that would be scary, not for you and your like fear of what people are going to do to you in that moment, but for your career. Think about the way in which you feel you need to present yourself. And maybe you feel really empowered to look however you want to look, but we still probably have those feelings of, I need to be pretty in order to be respected. If I want to get a promotion, I need to look good. And men and women both interact with this. Women, we interacted with it significantly more. If we are not happy and calm and generous in the workplace, at home, then there is almost always, there is an immediate consequence to that. And that consequence could be an argument with your partner, maybe not being heard at meetings, maybe all sorts of things along those lines. And attentive to the needs of others. I think this is maybe one of the most important ones that shows up that we don't recognize. And this shows up in fights with your partner. If you, I don't know, even if you're with a woman partner, this might show up there. I know it shows up with me and my partner, he's male. That attentive to the needs of others. As a woman, I have grown up with a strong lineage of independent women from my great grandma who waited until she was 40 to get married. And this was like depression times, and she only had one kid. She was super empowered. She was a teacher. She paid for herself. She did everything herself. And even I see myself needing to be attentive to the needs of others. What this looks like is I know when the dishes need to be done. I know when the laundry needs to be done. I know that when we have friends over, we need to make sure we have enough food in the house so everybody can eat. Or if we're having a party, that we need to make sure the floors are swept or make sure that there's toilet paper in the bathrooms. Or you probably know exactly when you need to get more paper towels and toilet paper for the house. Can do a thumbs up in the chat box or raise your hand in your thing if any of that resonates. Maybe you know when your dog needs to go to the vet, or you know when your kid is going to cry before they're going to cry. I would imagine a lot of y'all know what that feels like. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. So another reason why men and women's burnout is different is related to purpose and meaning. Men typically have been taught to have purpose and meaning in all parts of their life. women are taught to find purpose and meaning in raising kids and being a wife and being a woman in a place. We're not taught to look outside of ourselves as much. We're supposed to find purpose and meaning in ourselves only. Like, and that sounds like it maybe it's a good thing, but we need to find purpose and meaning outside of like the immediate family world. Does that make sense? And then the last one is the expectations. It has been proven time and time again. I can show you the research about how women have to do more to be seen as doing equal amounts to men. That's just how it is in our world. I think we're getting better, but obviously not that much better because this is relatively new research. And women still have to do significantly more to be seen as doing the same amount. And that's why we burn out, because we have to do more. Okay, so the causes, we're going to go into this. Depersonalization. Depersonalization is the depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion. Does that make sense? So this shows up in men more than it shows up in women. And we see this often with men as they're checking out, or they're not caring, or they just don't give a fuck anymore. Yeah. So decreased sense of accomplishment is the next one. This one I think is really prominent right now in nurses, in teachers, and people who have to go and fight the same battle day after day. And that's the feeling as though nothing that you do matters. You maybe loved your job when you first started it. It was your dream job. It was everything you could have imagined. And now you don't feel that. Now you see that the work you're doing doesn't seem to actually do anything, or you're not feeling as though it has purpose and meaning anymore. Maybe it did and it doesn't anymore. And the most important one for women, most often we are getting the cause of our burnout is emotional exhaustion. And that is doing too much for too long. And this is so important to realize that women have been taught to persist. We have to persist in order to make the next promotion, in order to get the house the right. We always have to persist. We're always fighting this battle. You don't get to yell at the guy who's catcalling you because you don't want to get into a fight and make it a big thing. Or you're in a work environment and somebody in that environment makes a comment about your body, but you were hired by them and you don't have the time or space in order to share something or to maybe make it a thing. So you brush it off. That is an emotional stress that's going on in your body that we're going to talk a little bit more about here. So the emotional tunnel. This is, I've written a post about this. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. And this is maybe one of the best ways to describe emotional exhaustion. If you think about an emotion's lifetime, an emotion needs to make it through the tunnel. So in order to get to the light at the end of the tunnel, you need to get all the way through the tunnel. And an emotion's lifespan doesn't have to be like 20 minutes or days. But the thing is, when we have uncomfortable emotions, we don't have time to fully feel that emotion. So we get stuck in the middle of the tunnel. So think about this tunnel. There's a picture here, but think about a tunnel. You need to just get to the light at the end of the tunnel to be done with that emotion and to move on. And oftentimes, think about a time maybe where somebody at work or at home said something that really irritated you, that like hurt your feelings, or that made you stressed, or that was just a jerk comment. But there's no time or space to actually either yell at that person, or because that's not appropriate, we can't just yell at people, or we can't do whatever we need to do to get that feeling out. So what do? We push it to the back of our brain. And when we push it back there, we sometimes think that we're getting to the end of the emotional tunnel, but we're not. We're in the middle of that tunnel. And we just forgot that we need to get out of it. And then we get stuck in that emotion. And when we're stuck in stress, when we're stuck in uncomfortable emotions, that takes a toll on us. And that leads to burnout way more than I think a lot of other things. Do you guys have any questions at this point in time before I kind of jump into more about stress and stress cycles? Anybody? Hello, world. None here. Awesome. Getting a couple of responses here and there. I think a lot of people are doing a lot of things right now. Okay, so we're gonna go into, this is gonna involve y'all writing something down in a minute. So stress. Stress is the neurological, physiological response that happens in our body. It does not matter what is happening. Your body is going to feel stress regardless of whether or not you acknowledge it. So if something stressful happens in your life, your body's going to store that and hold on to it unless you tell it to complete this cycle. Stressors are the actual triggers. So stressors are the jerk at work. Stressors is your dog asking to go out for the millionth time. Stressors is your kids suddenly need to do like 3 things, where you've got a sick kid and you're sick and you got to go to work, but you can't go to work. And now you have to work from home, and now you have to cook dinner, and now there's no food in the house and you have to figure out how to get food, or the house is turning into a mess. Those are all the stressors. Okay, so stressors is the actual trigger itself. Stress is the neurological, physiological response that's happening in your body. It's the same whether or not you are doing your taxes or being chased by a lion. If you think about being chased by a lion, your body goes into a stress response. The same thing happens when you are finishing your taxes or doing anything else. One of the biggest issues that we have in this day and age is that our stressors almost never have anything to do with completing our stress cycle. And I'm going to go into what that is, which means completing, just going all the way through the stress. So each one of you guys write down some of your stressors and then share them in the chat box. Let me know, what are your stressors that you can think of? Maybe right now, what are you stressed out about? Or yesterday or last week, what are y'all stressed out about? And I'll give you guys a couple minutes, but hopefully you guys can all have an opportunity to write something in there. I would love to hear from you guys. Work. Anything specific with work? Is there like big projects, or is it just the work environment as a whole? More work environment for me. Coworkers not being great. That's a hard one. Work-life balance, kids. Yes. And something I want to point out with all of these stressors, most of them, there's a lot that is not in your control. We don't get to change how people are. We get to change how we interact with them. We don't get to change our work environment unless we change careers or change jobs or leave that work environment. Or if we get into a leadership position and then are able to change it as a whole, which is oftentimes not the battle that we're wanting to do when we're burnt out. Work-life balance, kids add an extreme amount of stress to our lives. But the interesting thing, if we think about purpose and meaning, work and kids both have this in common. They are both extremely stressful things. Kids are extremely stressful. The fact that we do it is mind-blowing, but we do. And everything, we stop getting sleep. We have to learn all these things. All of a sudden they want to do all these activities, and we take it on and we do it year after year because it has purpose and meaning. It feels good. It gives us that warm fuzzy. And when we're getting burnt out, it stops having as much purpose and meaning. And that's when we get short with our kids. And that's the same with work, like I was sharing earlier. Work maybe used to have a lot of purpose and meaning, but it doesn't anymore. Something changed. You don't feel like you're having the same impact, or you aren't having the impact that you thought you were going to have. So that inherently is stressful. So we're going to go into, going into boundaries next. Okay. Sorry, I rearranged these slides and actually made it completely, this is all brand new. So sometimes I forget the order. So boundaries are such a huge part of stress and stressors, because raise your hand or do a thumbs up or something if you have had a hard time holding boundaries over a long period of time. I know I have. Yes. Something that shows up in my life is I have a hard time. Like, one of the boundaries is I like to go to bed early, but I like to hang out with my husband, and my husband is not a to bed early person. So a hard boundary for me to hold is going to bed early with myself because I want to hang out with him. But I know that if I do go to bed, I'll feel better inherently, but it's hard for me to make that decision. Um, and over the next couple slides, I'm going to talk about why it's hard to create and hold boundaries. Um, but the number one thing, I was listening to a Brene Brown podcast like maybe a month or two ago, and I loved the way that and this is a quote from somebody else, and it says, boundaries are the space in which I can love both you and me. So what that means is that I can take care of myself best when I hold this boundary with you. It can be difficult to create boundaries because we don't give ourselves the time or energy to be able to do that, to be able to think about what is going to be an actual helpful boundary. And the other big thing with boundaries is that they change the way that we're interacting with the relationship. If all of a sudden you're changing the playbook from a long-term relationship, maybe with a good friend, maybe with your partner, maybe with your kid, whatever it is, maybe with your work environment, you're like, forever, you've always been on your phone. You've always taken your work phone home, and you've been answering emails until 10 p.m. So your work thinks that that's normal, but that's killing you. That's like slowly killing you. You're like, it's super stressful. You don't want to do it, and you're not getting paid for it. So what you do is you change that, and you leave your work phone in the car. And at 7 p.m. or 5 p.m. or whatever time it is, every single day, you leave your work phone. That's a boundary that you have the right and agency to do, but that's hard to hold often because it's changing the dynamic of an entire relationship. So inherently, there's going to be a lot of pushback. Everybody else is like, who the hell is she to hold this boundary? Who is she? Who does she think she is? She's not some super important person, and they are envious and they are frustrated. So then they're going to push back and they're going to ask you to give up on your boundary. Is that familiar? Does that feel like something that anybody has gone through in their lives? Like you've created a boundary and then had a lot of pushback. I'll give you guys all a minute. So the next little exercise we're going to do is to write down a simple, easy boundary to follow and use that you can do for you every single day. Like, what is a super simple, maybe it's a boundary you've been working on for years and it just feels really easy at this point in time, but what is a boundary that you have with yourself? It could be that you go for a walk every day, or it's that you drink so many glasses of water every day, or that you don't interact with somebody, or you don't pick up the phone after a certain time, or you get off of Instagram at a certain time. What is an easy boundary for you? Going to bed on time. Never keep it though. Yes, I think going to bed on time is a very challenging boundary. Sometimes I wish, remember when you're like a kid, like, I mean, if you have kids, like you put your kids to bed and then you're like, okay, now I have to do all these other things. But going to bed on time, it's a really hard boundary to hold. What are other boundaries that you guys have in your life? Either an easy boundary or a hard boundary. Write it in the chat. Let's hear them. It's super important. An example that I have for a boundary is, and it's hard for me to hold this, but it helps me not get angry at my husband, is we have a deal with laundry. He does the laundry and folds it, and I put it away. That's the boundary that we have created. And if I stick to that, I don't start resenting him. I don't get angry at him. And I know what my part of the bargain is. Or if I ask him to do the dishes, or whatever, we make a deal about the dishes or something, if I do them because he isn't doing them in the amount of time that I want him to do them in, then I get resentful and angry, and I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm not taking care of him, and I'm not taking care of our relationship. Nothing in that is winning if I just go and do the thing. But oftentimes with women, we tend to just go do the thing. Can you raise your hand or say yes in the chat box if you just go and do the thing? Because you know what? Fuck it. It might as well be done right. Yes. Exactly. Anybody else? Yes. And do you end up getting angry or resentful over long periods of time? Even just putting the damn creamer after he gets coffee every day. Oh my God. Yes. Heard. I'm the person who leaves out the oat milk though. So. Nice job. You try not to. That's amazing. But we all kind of interact with it. These are all things that lead to our burnout. If you guys were to rate your burnout right now on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, don't feel really burnt out at all. Feel great, feel more energized and everything than ever before. 10, you kind of feel like crying like all the time. Like it's really, really intense. 5 is kind of that medium. 9. Anybody else? 7, yes. 10. And what are the main factors of your burnout? If you can identify them. If you can't identify them, it's totally okay too. We're going to get into that. And that's kind of some deeper work. But if you know a couple of like the main things, I'd love to hear them. Okay, so I'm going to dive into the stress cycle. I'm kind of halfway there. Okay, so I'm going to dive in trying to manage everything on top of everything. That is like the perfect sentence. A lot of it goes back to sticking to my boundaries. Yes, sticking to our boundaries is challenging. I'm going to go into the stress cycle, into what is physically, neurologically happening in our bodies when we feel stress. Most of this stems from my job. So like I said before, the difference between stress and a stressor, that's really important to understand, because this is what happens when you are feeling stress. When something happens, doesn't matter what it is, that causes stress, your body does all of this stuff. So epinephrine acts instantly to push more blood into your muscles. Excuse me, sorry. Endorphins help you ignore discomfort. Your heart beats faster, which means your blood is pumping harder and your blood pressure increases. This is why we have increased blood pressure that's why stress is such a big part of increased blood pressure and heart disease. Your heart is literally working so much harder. And this is happening whether or not you recognize it or not. If you are in a stress response, your body is doing this whether or not you want it to or not. You tend to breathe more quickly. Your muscles tense. Think about your neck ache that you've had for the past 10 years or 4 years, or that weird kink in your back that keeps happening out of nowhere. You're like, I thought I was fine, but my back hurts so much. Or that weird stomach thing that's going on in your body. All of those things are often huge correlations to stress. So your muscles are tensing, your sensitivity to pain diminishes. And if you think of all of these things in relation to running away from a lion, it's really important for you to not feel pain and for your heart to beat faster and epinephrine to work so you can move really quick because you need to run away from a lion. Makes sense. But in our everyday life, like I said, many times stressors are not in relation to completing our stress cycle. So you finish your taxes. Your attention is on alert. You're focusing on short-term here and now thinking. This is maybe one of the most important things that I like to stress, is when we are in a stress response, we are not able to make good long-term decisions because we're focusing on short-term here and now thinking. What's going to keep me safe right now? You're stressed out at work. Your husband is annoying you. You go home, your husband starts annoying you, and it feels like something that's going to keep you safe and make you happy and healthy right now is for the dishes to be done. But he still didn't do the dishes and you asked him to do them earlier today. And so all of a sudden there's a fight and then there's another stressor. So When we are in a stress response, our attention is on alert. We're focusing on right now thinking. Our senses are heightened, and to maximize our body's efficiency in this state, your other organ systems get deprioritized. This is really important. Your digestion slows, your immune function shifts, your growth and tissue repair decreases, as well as reproductive functioning. So if you think about gaining weight when you're stressed out, getting sick when you're stressed out, or right after a really stressful event, you get really sick. Maybe you're not healing as quickly as you used to, or you're having a hard time, like your period is irregular, or you're having a hard time getting pregnant. All of these things can all be related to stress. So what do we do? Completing the stress cycle. So let's go back here for a second. Stress happens. You need to tell your body that it can be done. You need to complete the cycle, get all the way through it. This is super important. Think about the things that stress you out. Okay, do it right now. All the things you guys all know. Now, the actual trigger itself is one thing. The stress itself is another. We can complete our stress cycle without fixing the trigger. Okay? So the trigger, that's creating a really solid boundary. When we have a boundary, that can fix it in the long term. But short term, we need to complete the stress cycle so that we're not killing ourselves. Literally, we will kill ourselves significantly faster if we don't complete our stress cycle. So this is so important. So to complete your stress cycle, one of the most important things that you can do is to move your body for 30 to 60 minutes. This is the most effective way to complete your stress cycle. This can be going for a run. This can be going for a walk. This can be dancing. This can be swimming. This can be playing pickleball. This can be skiing. It literally does not matter. Just moving your body. And what this does is it's cueing your brain that the world is safe again. Okay? Another thing, oftentimes we don't have time for the big 30 to 60 minutes, but something that can be really helpful is when you get home from your commute. Commuting is one of the most stressful things that we do in our lives. Before you walk in the door, before you just go and spew everything and put all your stuff down, tense up every single muscle in your body and then shake it off. You'll see this in dogs, in deer, when they almost get hit by a car. Whenever anything stressful happens to an animal, the first thing that they do after is shake. They're shaking it off. So that is something that you can do at any point in time. Other ways to complete your stress cycle: breathing, deep breaths, breath work, doing square breathing. These are all things that I talk about. I have exercises. I teach breath work, a few different breathing exercises in my online course, just as tools, as things to help you guys get to that burnout root cause. Positive social interaction. This can be just saying hi to the checkout person at the supermarket. This can be talking to your neighbor. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but when we tell our brain that, oh, we're safe again, that can be a really effective way to complete our stress cycle. Laughter, big belly laughs. This is why comedy is so important in our lives. And to tell you guys something is the completing of the stress cycle does not have to be in relation to the stressor itself. So maybe somebody at work was a jerk or whatever. If you go home and you watch Ali Wong, I don't know if anybody else loves her, I think she's hilarious, or your favorite comedian or your favorite comedy movie, and you just belly laugh all night, that is going to complete your stress cycle, even though it's not in relation to your actual stressor. Affection, this can be a hug or a kiss or just physical touch with somebody that you feel safe with. So with affection, one of the biggest rules that they talk about in a lot of this information I get from Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Amelia and Emily Nagoski. Affection is a 6-second kiss. So kissing somebody for 6 seconds. And why 6 seconds? Because 6 seconds is too long to be kissing somebody you do not feel safe with. That is it. Same thing for a hug. Hugging somebody for 20 to 30 seconds. That is too long to be hugging somebody that you don't feel comfortable and safe with. And those are things that allow your body to fully like release. A big cry. Kids are really good at this. When the worst thing in the world happens to them, somebody is mean to them on the playground, or they get their toy taken away or whatever, they cry, and they cry like crazy. And then literally 5 minutes later, it's like nothing happened. It's crazy. And then creative expression. This can be playing music. This can be creating art. But these are all things that are helping your brain fully get through. And this is like lizard brain. This is like the low part of your brain that we're not thinking about. We don't have a lot of control over. It just is. But it's going to be in a stress response unless we tell it differently. So every single one of you, think about one way that you can complete your stress cycle today. Maybe you can go for a walk. Maybe you can watch a funny movie. Maybe you can cry because you've been needing to cry for a little while. So something that I am going to bring up is directed attention. This is incredibly important. And this goes back to the very first thing on here that I didn't really talk about is getting outside. If you do any of these things outside, it is like way more effective. And the biggest reason is directed attention is a really important thing that we're using. It's a prominent role in successful cognitive and emotional functioning. Directed attention is the part of our brains that we have to change what we're doing. Like literally, like think about walking down the street in a city. You are trying to stay alive, and you also are realizing that there's a car coming, and then there's a billboard flashing, and then you need to go to work, and then you need to write an email. This is that feeling at 2:00 when you've been working all day and you can't think anymore. Like you can't be creative. It's taking you 3 hours to write the same email. Does that make sense? Or do you guys have any questions about that? So one of the best ways to replenish our directed attention is to be in nature. So this is a quote from like a scholarly article basically that I have. And I'll put this all in the follow-up email as well. So unlike natural environments, urban environments contain bottom-up stimulation, example car horns, that capture attention dramatically, and additionally requires directed attention to overcome the stimulation, avoiding traffic, ignoring advertising, making urban environments less restorative. What nature does is it is grasping your attention modestly. Think about a sunset. Who here loves sunsets? They're really relaxing almost always. Being on a nice walk in nature, it's just naturally relaxing. And that's because our directed attention, our ability to have to change what we're thinking and doing, is not being assaulted the entire time. When you're writing an email at work and then your phone dings and then you remember that you're hungry and then somebody's texting you over here and then you get back to the email, all of that is requiring an insane amount of attention. And to be completely honest, our brains have not developed as quickly as the rest of the world. So we are not as technologically advanced as our phones and computers, which is not weird. It should be normal. I don't think we ever need to advance that far. But directed attention, we need to restore it in order to feel good, in order to be less stressed. So getting outside is incredibly effective way to decrease your stress. And also literally going for an hour-long walk outside will help you be able to finish your work significantly more than trying to bang out the next 3 hours or whatever. If you feel exhausted, instead of grabbing a cup of coffee, go for a walk. See what changes. I promise you, it'll change. So let's make a plan. So everybody on here, take a second and let's write some things down. So completing your stress cycle to get your brain out of the here and now thinking. So the number one thing in this plan is going to be one way that you can complete your stress cycle. So right now, think about what is a simple, easy way for you to complete your stress cycle. For me, it is either crying and or going for a run every single day. Going for a run or a walk every day is probably the most effective way. for me to complete my stress cycle? Once you've written it down on your piece of paper, type it in the chat. Let's hear, what is the way that you want to use to complete your stress cycle? Creative expression, got positive social interaction. We've got all of these things. What is a specific way that you can complete your stress cycle? And I'll go back a couple slides for you to see it. Of all these ways, right in there, a long bath. So something that's interesting, Katie, is a long bath actually isn't a way to complete our stress cycle. That's like a coping mechanism in a different way, because a long bath doesn't fit into, unless you're doing breath work in there or you're crying or laughing in there, because something that happens is self-care inherently can start to burn us out as well. Because with self-care, if we're only taking a bath, then it can make all the other walls look dingier. It can make everything else seem different. So to actually get out of the stress response itself, you need to do something else. A long bath can be helpful, but it's not helping the stress response happen. Does that make sense? Or do you have questions on that, Katie? Walk outside, exercising, laughing with my kid. So let's make a plan of some way that we can, awesome. So yeah, Katie, let's think of a way that you can complete your stress cycle. Maybe breath work, a big cry, maybe painting. I like to paint when the weather's crappy, like for the rest of the day today, the weather's gonna be crap for me. So I'll probably have to do something else or go to the gym. I don't really like going to the gym as much though. Ways that you can complete your stress cycle. Write it in the chat. Let's make a plan. Exercise. Awesome. And then there's a couple of other folks in here. Well, everybody else, think of a way to complete your stress cycle and write it down. Something that I like to do is make it simple. Don't make it too hard. If exercise is going to stress you out, sometimes I say body movement. Sometimes I say I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk, or I'm going to tense up all my muscles and then relax them. So one of the most important things that we do in my online course is we integrate and we sustain new habits that support our boundaries. And these can be really simple. So we're going to create one new daily habit for you to each engage in, and make the habit simple. For me, I've done drink a glass of water before drinking coffee. I have a smoothie every single morning for breakfast, even if it's not what I want. Going for a 10-minute walk, writing down 3 gratitudes, taking 30 minutes alone, really doesn't matter what the habit is, but create one daily habit that you're going to try to do every single day that can be simple and easy, that's going to support you in completing your stress cycle. It's going to support you in interacting with your work and your home life better. What's something that you want to do? So I'll give you guys each a couple of minutes to think of a new daily habit. It can be doing push-ups every day. Could be doing sit-ups or taking your vitamins. Often things that help us take care of ourselves feel really good to do. Taking time for breathing exercises or meditation. Yes, that's a good one. And something that can be extremely helpful with these daily habits is to make them really specific. So with taking time for breathing exercises or meditation, maybe it's take 5 minutes first thing in the morning or in the middle of the day or whenever. Take 5 minutes to do a breathing exercise and 5 minutes to do a meditation. The more specific we are, the more that we can check that box and like make it feel like, oh, I did something, I've accomplished this. And then it's the little habits, it's the little things that create our life. If we try to do everything all at once, it becomes stressful and like too much. Anybody else want to share their new habit for the week that they can engage in? My daily habit that I do every single day is have a smoothie and drink water. I keep it really simple. I don't want to make it too hard on myself, um, because we need to fail, but we also need to win. So I give myself little wins. So I'm going to kind of dive into how we do these things in the online course. So this weekly habit task might seem small, might not seem like a big deal, but it is. It creates change in the long term. So in the online course for 6 weeks, we create a new daily habit weekly, if you can. Or maybe you're working on the same daily habit throughout the entire time. But the idea is to create sustainable growth. The idea is to not, we all have had those moments where all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, I need to change my life. And we start a new diet where we're like trying to eat healthier and we're trying to exercise an hour every single day and we're trying to keep the house clean and we're trying to get a promotion and we're trying to journal and we're trying to do all of these things. And then all of a sudden we can't do it and you're burnt out after 2 weeks of doing it. Raise your hand if you have had those moments. You're like, I'm going to change my life. And then you do it. And then 2 weeks later, you're burnt out on yourself. Raise your hand. Let me know. Yes. So in the online course, something that is so helpful, and then actually one person that's on here has already done the online course, and we have journal prompts every single week. We have therapeutic skills that we are walking you through. And all of these things are also in relation to wilderness skills. Because something that I find really helpful is when I'm burnt out or stressed is for things to be put into perspective. When it feels like I made the biggest mistake ever on a call or at work, if I can relate it to something physical and concrete that's in relation to a skill or something like that, then it helps me have perspective and let go of it. Because who here has been like, oh, I need to let go of my stress or I need to let go of my expectations? Like, letting go is pretty freaking hard. It's not like this super simple, easy thing that we can just do all the time. Or maybe we can. Some people are very good at it. Myself and a lot of my friends. It's a task. It's a lot of things. So when we have perspective, it helps us let go of what is going on. The biggest part of this online course that people seem to get the most out of is the one-on-one support, the weekly coaching calls that you have access to. Every single week, we get to talk about what's going on with you and your life. So we check in on your daily habits. We text each other every single day, holding ourselves accountable to what our habit is going to be. Because our burnout as women is so much deeper than just your work environment. It's something else in relation to that. It is our emotional experience as humans. It's getting through our emotions. It's feeling purpose and meaning. So we need to dive into what's going on for you. And we talk the real talk. I'm not going to like sugarcoat things. And that is so helpful in helping you guys get through it. There's also guided meditations and visualizations. This is, like I was mentioning before, I teach you some of the like breathing exercises. I teach you things that can help you moving forward, just more things to put in that toolbox of yours, because we all have to cope. Life is not supposed to be without stress. It is supposed to have stress in it, but we do need to interact with it helpfully. Okay, so let's go back to that plan. How the number, you have 2 things to take away from this. The plan is, how are you going to complete your stress cycle, and what is your new daily habit that you're going to do? Write those down on a Post-it note, put it on your mirror, put it on your computer, put it as your phone background, but put it down, because we're about to go into a kind of stressful time of year. It's Christmas. Maybe we don't have as much money as we thought we were going to in our bank accounts, or maybe your kid all of a sudden is getting sick, or maybe your in-laws are coming over, or you're in the middle of a house renovation, or you're supposed to get a bonus and you're stressed out about what's going to happen next, or you kind of want to leave your job, but you're not really sure. Something at work is happening. There's big projects, there's big deadlines, there's lots of stuff going on. Raise your hand if you feel like there's a lot going on at this time of year. a lot of you guys mentioned being at an 8, a 9, a 10 for your burnout. Yes. So the online course, the biggest part that we do with that is helping you guys get through it. Because when we get to the root cause of our burnout, we're healing it. We're not just putting a Band-Aid on it. And everybody here on the call gets a $50 discount on the course. So if you sign up, all the information is going to be in the follow-up email. And in that email, we will talk about, I'll give you all the discount codes and everything like that. But I want to help all of you guys be not stressed out and burnt out all the time. Like, get through your burnout. And then the big thing that we, like, this is the money. This is like everything. This event literally like changes lives. It heals the burnout. It is the time away from your family, from your work, from your phone, from your technology, from everything that heals our burnout. Because our burnout, oftentimes we cannot change it because we haven't had time to slow down and create a new boundary. We don't even know what we're feeling. We don't know where we're at in that emotional tunnel because we thought we were at the end of it. And turns out we're not at the end of that emotional tunnel. We're stuck in the middle of it and we don't know why. And we haven't had time to just be alone and to cry. So solitude is about spending time alone in nature. It's a full digital detox. It's a community. It's a small group of women who are also committed to getting to the root cause of their burnout. They are committed to being vulnerable. They are committed to being there. This event is all inclusive. I don't stress you out on being stressed out. Like, I take care of everything, your food, your gear. All you need to do is show up with clothes and a water bottle, and I will take care of everything else for you. We are going to be in nature. We're going to be in the beautiful desert, which has a really, like, the desert has something special about it. I think it's the openness, like being able to see for a long way. It helps our lizard brain feel safe. And this event is hosted a couple times a year. The next one is going to be in March. It's open for registration right now. And this course is a phenomenal way to set yourself up for success, because we might feel good right now. And then almost always I get a lot of calls in January and February of people feeling really stressed out. Things are taking their toll. They're in the middle of a big project. They're super stressed out about something, whatever is going on. And they don't have a break coming up because they didn't plan it. This is the break to plan it. The next event is March 17th, 18th, and 19th. Okay, so March 17th, 18th, and 19th. And the next event, if you can commit before December 31st, all of y'all get $495 off. So the event is priced and valued at $29.95, and right now it is $2,500, and that is to help support all of y'all in going into the new year. It just works so well, and each one of you, gets a discount, and there's payment plans available. There's all the things. If it's something that you want to do or you don't want to do, you're afraid to do, or something along those lines, if it feels like too much or not enough, just stay in contact with me, sign up for that grounding call. Because the next thing to remind each of you is that all of that aside, you don't need to sign up for anything that I do. I don't care. If it doesn't feel aligned, don't do it. That's perfect. But each of you should sign up for a free grounding call. These grounding calls are an incredible way to get to the root cause of your burnout, to dive into your burnout, to find out what's going on. To sign up, you're going to get a follow-up email. Each and every one of you is going to get a follow-up email, or you can go to groundingsource.com and you can click schedule a call. And I think it's called Solitude Interest / grounding call. They're about the same length. So find a space in my schedule before the end of the year. Do it. It's an incredible way to heal and to get into the root cause. And we can talk about your plan more. So the last thing is to follow us. Follow me on Instagram. That's like my favorite way to interact with folks. It's really easy, at Grounding Source. And And when you follow me there, you can ask me any questions, anything that comes up. And I have a bunch of resources on there as well. So please feel free to, yeah, follow me on Instagram, send me any questions. And this is the time and space to ask me, do you guys have any questions? Wow, we are right on time. That is a miracle. If you don't have to, if you need to hop off, that's totally fine. I'm also here for questions, comments, concerns. This is an actual picture of the desert that we go to and during Milky Way season, which this place is one of the least light polluted places in the world, at least in our country, at least. The closest city that we have is Vegas, which is like 2.5 hours away. So very beautiful, dark skies, full of stars. Any questions, anybody? For those who are still on, I completed the 6-week course with Marissa. Oh, so this is from Chanel. Chanel, sorry. For those who are still on, I completed the 6-week course with Marissa and it was absolutely amazing. I highly recommend it. And I'm doing the event in March. I'm so excited to have you on the event too. It's gonna be so fun. If anybody has any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to me. Yay. I'm literally drinking my smoothie right now. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you for being on.